From the earliest days of Pokemon, the fighting type has represented more than physical strength. It is the embodiment of focus, balance, and perseverance, the spirit that turns instinct into technique. Across regions and generations, these Pokemon have been portrayed not as brawlers, but as artists in motion. The first fighting type gym ever introduced was in Saffron City, where Sabrina's psychic powers overshadowed it. Yet the fighting dojo beside her gym remains a quiet monument to the discipline that defined the type's origins. Inside, a single line of students once stood behind their master, ready to prove themselves through strength of will rather than cruelty. That small dojo marked the beginning of a philosophy that would echo through the entire series. Machamp stands as one of the earliest symbols of that philosophy. The developers designed it to represent strength with control, a creature powerful enough to lift mountains, but trained enough to use that power only when necessary. Its belt, inspired by championship wrestling attire, wasn't just decoration. In the lore, it keeps its body's raw energy contained, symbolizing mastery over impulse. Early artwork shows Machamp with exaggerated veins and flexing poses based on real human muscle references, but the Pokédex framed this not as vanity, but as discipline. Even its four arms serve a purpose: balance in battle, efficiency of motion. When Machamp Gigantamaxes, its stance widens, becoming almost meditative despite its massive power, a visual metaphor for calm in chaos. Lucario later expanded that idea, taking the fighting type beyond the physical. Inspired by Egyptian jackals and martial monks, it channels aura, the unseen energy between living things. The concept of aura first appeared in early script notes, describing it as the rhythm of life felt through stillness. Lucario's fighting style blends strikes and counters, like a martial artist who listens before acting. Its mega evolution was designed to look like a spiritual awakening, with its hair transforming into elongated dreadlock-like shapes that resemble energy flowing freely. Even the move Aurasphere is more than a projectile. It represents empathy turned into strength, a recurring theme among fighting types who fight not to harm, but to understand. The type's philosophy extends to its human trainers as well. Maylene, the Veilstone City gym leader in Sinnoh, is depicted as young but remarkably grounded. Her Pokémon reflect her own balance: Lucario, Meditite, and Machoke, all symbols of restraint and trust. Her badge, the Cobble Badge, was designed with interlocking shapes to represent unity of body and mind. In concept art, Game Freak described Maylene as a child master, not of age, but of spirit. She stands barefoot in her arena, echoing traditional martial arts customs, grounding herself to the floor as if the earth itself steadies her will. Hariyama, another fighting Pokemon with deep roots in cultural expression, embodies the sumo spirit. Its massive palms and solid stance are drawn directly from Rikishi formality, the kind of presence that relies on gravity rather than speed. The developers specifically shaped its body to feel weighted, with wide hips and thick arms that resist fluid animation on purpose, a reminder that even in stillness, power exists. Its bright, ceremonial sash represents not vanity, but respect. Every color in its design is tied to the ring, the place where combat is sacred. The Pokédex even mentions Hariyama flattening trucks with its strikes, but it is never portrayed as malicious. Its strength serves as celebration, the fight as ritual. Heracross presents a different face of fighting, one of perseverance and loyalty. Though its bug typing defines its body, its fighting heart defines its purpose. Inspired by the Japanese rhinoceros beetle, Heracross represents the summer contests of endurance and childhood wonder. Its horn resembles a samurai crest, and the anime reinforced its nature as honorable rather than aggressive. When it uses Megahorn, its entire body moves in harmony, a creature that fights as nature intended, with precision and respect. In the Pokédex, Heracross doesn't seek fights. It defends forests, showing that the fighting type is often protective, not predatory. The fighting type's symbolism is visible even in the items connected to it. The fighting gem, introduced in Unova, releases a burst of focused energy when a move of that type is used. Its color, a deep amber hue, was chosen to represent grounded energy, not fiery heat. The game's developers once described gems as a crystallized memory of intent. When a Pokemon uses one, it's not just amplifying power, it's channeling purpose. Later, in Alola, the Phytinium Z crystal continued that philosophy. During the Z-move all-out pummeling, the animation shows both trainer and Pokemon synchronizing their movements perfectly, fists striking in rhythm. That motion is more than spectacle, it's ritualized connection. Gallade offers one of the purest examples of the fighting type's aesthetic, grace and precision. While Gardevoir was designed to symbolize elegance and empathy, Gallade mirrors chivalry and honor. Its arm blades were modeled after both fencing sabers and folded origami to give them natural curvature while maintaining sharpness. The Pokédex describes it reading its opponent's moves through muscle tension, a poetic nod to intuition. In battle, Gallade's calm expressions contrast its deadly precision, an intentional design choice by Ken Sugimori to show that confidence needs no aggression. Mega Gallade's cape-like arms were inspired by heroic imagery, evoking a knight's mantle rather than armor, and the animation team designed its attack frames to mimic the rhythm of sword dance steps. The first true fighting-type gym leader ever introduced was Brawly from Dewford Town. His personality was inspired by a mixture of surfer culture and martial discipline, combining calmness and challenge in one. His badge, the Knuckle Badge, was shaped to resemble a clenched fist, but the metallic sheen came from saltwater references, a subtle tie to the sea that surrounds Dewford Island. Brawly's fighting style emphasizes flow rather than force, his Pokemon moving like waves. His Meditite and Makuhita reflect his belief that patience builds power, and his gym's dimly lit arena, illuminated by shifting lights, was designed to simulate focus training in isolation. Blaziken, Hoenn's fiery fighter, took inspiration from Japanese superheroes, specifically the Super Sentai genre, where characters rely on courage and determination as much as strength. Its design reflects the silhouette of a masked warrior, and its fiery wristbands mimic the image of controlled propulsion, symbolizing both speed and inner heat. Its mega evolution accentuates this with flame jets that flare from its ankles, letting it leap with impossible momentum. In its earliest drafts, Blaziken was described as the kick that ignites the sky. Its move, Blaze Kick, was coded to always appear brighter than normal fire attacks, emphasizing its connection to courage. The evolution of Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, and Hitmontop remains one of the most iconic examples of martial variety. Each embodies a different aspect of combat: flexibility, technique, and rhythm. Hitmonlee's elastic legs were based on the coiling spring of a striking snake. Inspired by Bruce Lee's explosive motion, the reason its Pokédex speaks of legs that freely extend. Hitmonchan, modeled after boxing greats, was given its own lore as a fighter who trains every day to perfect its punches, its gloves colored red to represent focus. Hitmontop, the latecomer, symbolizes balance through chaos, a Pokemon that fights through spin and momentum. Together, the trio represents the fighting type's range, not one way of fighting, but many paths to mastery. But Medicham reflects stillness as a form of strength. Its design merges yoga and kickboxing, blending meditation and motion in perfect balance. The red markings on its body were modeled after chakra points, representing energy flow. Its Pokédex states that it can sense its opponent's every move through inner calm. When it mega evolves, jewels appear along its body to symbolize alignment of body and mind. The art team for Generation 3 described Medicham as the moment between breath and strike, a serene idea that captures the true essence of its type. Throughout the series, the fighting type's gyms have always been portrayed with quiet reverence. The Veilstone Dojo glows with soft light and mats that cushion every step. The Stoan Side Gym in Galar, led by Bee, hums with echoes of stone impacts as she trains in solitude. Bee's personality was intentionally written as minimalistic, fewer words, more expression. The white bandages around her arms and feet were based on Muay Thai hand wraps, and her battle stance is one of the most detailed in the franchise. Developers stated that Bia's animation cycle was hand-keyed rather than motion captured to ensure each breath felt deliberate. Her gym badge, shaped like a clenched fist within a circle, symbolizes resolve without aggression. The fighting type's moves also carry hidden meaning. Close combat, for instance, was programmed to display no visual distance between Pokémon, one of the few attacks coded to reduce spatial buffering. It's meant to look like mutual respect, two fighters meeting face to face. Focus Punch was built around risk and reward, the highest base power of its generation, but only if the user could remain calm under pressure. Detect, a move shared among disciplined fighters, reflects inner focus over physical might. Even moves like Bulk Up were introduced to give the type meditative weight, stat boosts achieved not through power-ups, but through mental preparation. Pangoro's heavy stance and rebellious expression embody the wilder side of the fighting type. When it first appeared in Kalos, it broke the stereotype of serene martial artists and replaced it with raw street power. The small leaf held in its mouth came from early sketches where designers wanted a detail that represented calm restraint, like a boxer's mouthpiece before a match. Pangoro's dual dark typing is symbolic. It doesn't fight for glory, but for protection. The Pokédex notes that it guards smaller Pokémon from bullies, and its strength is matched by its sense of justice. Developers described it as a Pokémon that fights because it cares, showing that the fighting type's morality runs deeper than victory. Mienshao from Unova presents the opposite interpretation, elegance through motion. Its design draws from Chinese long-sleeve dance and wushu martial arts, giving it a fluid, whip-like fighting style. Its fur sleeves aren't decorative. They're flexible extensions used to strike with precision. The Pokédex describes it wiping them clean after each battle, an act of discipline rather than vanity. Early animation tests exaggerated its movement speed to make it appear like a blur, evoking the calm lethality of a true master. Even its cry was crafted to sound like a soft exhale, giving Mienshao an aura of control and silence. Infernape continues the fighting lineage of starter Pokémon with its fiery passion balanced by technique. Based on Sun Wukong, the Monkey King of Chinese mythology, it embodies both mischief and enlightenment. Its fire crown is not uncontrolled. It represents a burning focus, refined through training. Developers intentionally gave Infernape an even distribution of physical and special attack stats to reflect the harmony between mind and body. In the anime, it was used to explore emotion as strength, with Ash's Infernape channeling its anger into controlled flame. The flames around its head are said to flicker like thought itself, steady when calm, wild when uncertain. Sirfetch'd, the noble knight of Galar, was born from humor turned legend. The original Farfetch'd had long been the subject of jokes about weakness, but Sirfetch'd turned that into triumph. Its leek sword is a genuine blade in lore, said to wither after many battles, forcing it to retire in honor rather than defeat. The shield it carries, made from a leaf, reinforces the theme of simplicity as strength. Game Freak's designers described Sirfetch'd as pure-hearted, a knight whose only enemy is dishonor. Even its animations, where it salutes before striking, were carefully timed to feel deliberate, a calm act of pride before combat. Conkeldurr stands as one of the most literal representations of labor as strength. It carries concrete pillars, not as weapons, but as proof of craftsmanship. In the Pokédex, it is said to have taught humans how to mix concrete, a rare instance of Pokémon shaping civilization. The three-stage line of Timburr, Gurdurr, and Conkeldurr tells a full story of apprenticeship, work, and mastery. In competitive play, Conkeldurr's Guts ability made it stronger when suffering from status conditions, a poetic nod to the fighting type's resilience under pain. Even its name reflects humor and heart. Concrete, and Elder, a craftsman whose power lies not in youth, but experience. Hawlucha captures the flamboyant, playful side of the fighting type. Its design celebrates the art of performance fighting, inspired by Mexican lucha libre wrestling. The bright colors and mask markings aren't decoration, they represent the dual nature of competition as both show and skill. Its dual flying typing was chosen to symbolize agility in spirit, allowing it to soar as it strikes. In development sketches, its wings were drawn with exaggerated folds to mimic the cape of a wrestler mid-entrance. The move Flying Press was designed uniquely for it, being the only attack in the franchise that deals both fighting and flying damage at once, a literal blend of art and discipline. Keldeo, the youngest member of the Swords of Justice, bridges myth and modern storytelling. Its fighting type reflects the theme of potential, a learner standing among masters. Its resolute form represents self-realization, a design shift that emphasizes maturity through the flowing mane and firmer stance. The Pokédex writes of its training under Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion, each teaching a different aspect of combat, defense, power, and speed. Keldeo's signature move, Secret Sword, was built to ignore physical defenses entirely, mirroring the idea that true strength transcends barriers. It's one of the few Pokémon whose power grows, not through evolution, but through belief in itself. Toxicroak is a contradiction, reckless, charming, and lethal. Its fighting and poison combination symbolizes duality, inner calm versus outward danger. The inflated poison sac under its throat was designed to pulse rhythmically during attacks, adding a sinister sense of life to its design. The Pokédex compares the strength of its poison to a chemical weapon, yet in battle animations, it strikes with practiced rhythm, suggesting a martial discipline hidden beneath chaos. Developers have said Toxicroak was meant to feel like a street fighter with secrets, a Pokémon that wins not by brute strength, but by strategy. Anilape is one of the darkest evolutions ever given to a fighting Pokemon. Evolving from Primeape, it transcends rage itself, becoming a being of fury turned to spirit. Its ghost and fighting combination reflects the idea of passion persisting beyond death, power that refuses to fade. The lore describes it as a warrior whose emotion burned too strongly for its body to contain. The gray flames around its arms in the artwork were drawn to look like the embers of exhausted anger, the moment after a lifelong fight ends. It's not a monster of wrath, but of liberation, a Pokemon that achieved peace only through release. Iron Valiant, the paradox fusion of Galade and Gardevoir, reimagines the fighting type through the lens of future technology. It embodies courage made mechanical, a warrior perfected by science. The luminous accents along its armor pulse in rhythm with its heartbeat, showing that even artificial design can echo life. Game Freak described it as a synthetic knight, a Pokemon that fights for no trainer, driven only by its programming to protect. The blades that extend from its arms are not metal, their energy solidified by thought. Its fighting type symbolizes progress, the courage to evolve beyond limits. The fighting type's influence is seen in the gyms and arenas scattered across regions. In Galar, Bia's stadium walls echo with the sound of sand striking skin. In Hoenn, Brawly's Surfside Gym represents flow and adaptation, the idea that a fighter must move like water. Even the small Saffron Dojo in Kanto, where students spar in silence, carries history older than badges. The mats of that dojo are marked with invisible scuffs from decades of battles unseen. Each gym represents a different philosophy, the fighting type as meditation, spectacle, rebellion, and art. The fighting badge symbols themselves reveal layers of meaning. The knuckle badge resembles strength held in restraint. The cobble badge is made of interlocked forms, body and spirit. The stow on side badge forms a clenched fist inside a circle, the cycle of endurance. Across games, no two fighting type badges share exact symmetry. They're each imperfect by design, reflecting that no two fighters master the same path. Fighting type items also carry hidden lore. The black belt, introduced in the earliest games, was described in developer notes as a token of repetition, an object symbolizing practice through countless battles. The expert belt, which replaced it in later generations, was said to be stained with the sweat of perseverance. The focus sash was originally coded to activate only during trainer battles, representing survival under pressure. The fighting memory, used by Silvally, was given the amber hue of the old fighting gem to suggest legacy, a continuation of spirit from one era to the next. Moves unique to this type embody emotion through action. Dynamic Punch was designed to simulate unpredictability, a move of absolute force that could leave both fighters reeling. Close combat stat drops weren't punishment, but humility, the cost of lowering one's guard to strike with honesty. Reversal, a move that grows stronger when near defeat, embodies the philosophy that true strength appears only when everything else is gone. Even Focus Blast, infamous for its inconsistency, was intentionally coded with lower accuracy to make success feel like triumph through chaos. Together, they form an unspoken trinity, the heart, the mind, and the body united. Each represents a stage of mastery, sensing, understanding, and acting. When their mega evolutions were introduced, the concept team noted that these three designs embodied the fighter's path toward enlightenment. In the Pokemon World Tournament of Unova, Fighting-type trainers often dominated the competitive scene, not through brute force, but through timing. Their battles were slower, deliberate, built on anticipation. Developers specifically adjusted the AI behavior for fighting specialists to favor counterattacks rather than aggression. This design philosophy was meant to teach players patience, that rhythm matters more than reaction. It was a quiet lesson hidden behind flashing moves and loud cheers. Every generation's fighting Pokemon teaches a version of the same truth, that strength without control is chaos, and control without heart is emptiness. From Machamp's restraint to Lucario's empathy, from Gallade's precision to Pangoro's loyalty, the fighting type continues to reflect humanity's oldest struggle to master the self. Long before the regions were connected by trains or ships, the earliest Pokemon trainers passed their time in makeshift arenas, cleared fields surrounded by stone markers and lined by flickering torches. These primitive battle circles became the spiritual ancestors of the modern fighting dojos still seen today. Many fighting Pokemon are said to have learned their techniques not from humans, but alongside them, mirroring the stances and motions of ancient warriors. That shared language between trainer and Pokemon still defines the type's heart. Heracross stands as a link between the natural and disciplined aspects of the type. Though a bug at its core, its heart burns with martial purpose. The horn, crowning its head, resembles both the crest of a samurai and the stylized shape of a torii gate, connecting nature and spirituality. When it locks horns with an opponent, it's not acting on impulse. The Pokédex calls this a sacred contest. Even the way it cleans its wings afterward was animated to look like the ritual cleaning of a sword. In the anime, Heracross's polite nods before combat became a small symbol of fighting-type respect, victory without malice. Medicham reflects the opposite approach, a stillness that transcends muscle. Its meditative poses were drawn from yoga traditions and breathing exercises, with its body patterned to mark the chakra points of energy flow. It moves not from reflex, but from rhythm, attacking only when its heartbeat aligns with its opponent's. Early design drafts showed it floating slightly above the ground, but developers chose to anchor its feet so that every animation emphasized grounded calm. Its mega evolution, covered in gemstones, represents enlightenment, each gem symbolizing a center of focus. The lore describes it as reaching inner peace through endless repetition, echoing the fighting type's devotion to patience. Hariyama, by contrast, is noise and life incarnate. Its wide stance and enormous hands channel the discipline of sumo, but its personality bursts with warmth. The developers specifically gave it a broad smile to remind players that power can be kind. The bright sash wrapped around its waist is modeled after a sumo mawashi, and the circular arena of its sprite in Pokemon Stadium mimics the clay Dohyo ring. According to the Pokédex, Hariyama trains by pushing ocean liners, a line that began as a developer's joke about immovable strength, then became canon. Its fighting spirit is contagious. It waves its arms before battle not to intimidate, but to build energy, as if warming up the air itself. Even the moves of the fighting type carry cultural echoes. Brick Break, one of its earliest consistent techniques, came from the traditional martial art of board-breaking demonstrations. Developers animated it to make the target flash white at impact, symbolizing a clean strike. Vital Throw was intended to represent Aikido, the art of using an enemy's momentum against them. Seismic Toss, one of the oldest fighting moves, was inspired by professional wrestling, its final animation freezing the moment before impact to suggest reverence for the craft. These design decisions made each attack more than mechanics. They became storytelling through motion. In tournament settings like the Pokemon World Championships, the fighting type has historically been seen as unpredictable. Trainers describe it as the mind game type because its moves often depend on prediction. Bulk up, swords dance. Detect all rely on reading the opponent's intent. Developers intentionally gave these Pokemon strong abilities that rewarded timing, such as Guts, Steadfast, and Inner Focus. Each is named after emotional endurance rather than raw strength. Even the ability Justified, first seen on the Swords of Justice, reinforces this theme, a power that grows not from rage, but from righteousness. The design philosophy behind these Pokemon often stems from stories of mastery through hardship. Blaziken's fire burns brighter after each fall. Lucario channels empathy into aura, and Pangoro fights for those it protects. In the earliest lore drafts, the fighting type wasn't even meant to be a battle category. It was labeled martial during development of the original red and green versions. The team renamed it to make it sound broader, but the spirit of that first label remains in every move. Fighting Pokemon don't just hit harder, they express will. The fighting type's relation to competition extends beyond gym battles. The fighting dojo of Saffron City, the battle maison of Kalos, and the training lowlands of the Isle of Armor all serve as quiet shrines to discipline. Each location hides small details, training bells that ring softly in the wind, tatami mats arranged in uneven rows to symbolize humility. Even the music in these places follows rhythmic percussion patterns inspired by traditional taiko drums, giving a heartbeat to every fight. In regions like Galar, the type evolved into public sport. Bia's matches take place before roaring crowds, yet her demeanor remains stoic. She treats every fight as prayer. The developers confirmed that her animation team studied kickboxing stances for her idle poses, but also modeled her breathing rhythm to slow the pacing of each scene. This subtle animation makes her calm stand out amid chaos. Her ace Pokemon, Graplocked, continues this theme, a cephalopod martial artist that fights only in shallow water where it can stand on its tentacles like legs. Its suction-based grapples mimic judo holds, and its name merges grapple and octopus. In concept art, Graplock's face was drawn with a hint of sadness, suggesting that its greatest rival is itself. The fighting type's energy has always been portrayed through grounded colors, reds, browns, and golds that reflect the earth. In the type chart design for Generation VI, these colors were adjusted to be warmer, closer to the tones of clay and skin to represent connection to the body. The official artwork for the Fighting Gem and Z Crystal were polished to resemble polished amber rather than gemstone, and the team confirmed that this was to create a feeling of warmth and density. Every shade of the type carries meaning: tactile, human, alive. In Unova, the Pokemon League includes Marshall, an Elite Four member whose strength represents humility. His speech before battle remains one of the most quoted lines among fans. Power is not will, it is the physical form of your will. The writing team for Black and White built his dialogue around philosophy rather than rivalry. His partner Pokemon, Sawk and Throw, mirror this two opposing forms of the same idea. Throw's design reflects Judo's red belt of mastery, while Sawk's karate-inspired blue represents precision. The pair were created together, designed by Atsuko Nishida as yin and yang that meet through respect. In the anime, every slash is accompanied by a low chime rather than impact noise, reinforcing elegance. When its mega form debuted, the cape design was meant to suggest not arrogance, but readiness the moment before a duel, when silence carries weight. Beyond individual fighters, the type as a whole influences Pokemon design language. Whenever a new generation is conceptualized, Game Freak's designers begin with emotion. What is this type's feeling? For fighting, the notes consistently describe warmth, connection, and conviction. The gestures of its Pokemon flexing arms, lowered stances, closed eyes, echo meditation as much as motion. This consistency makes the type instantly recognizable, even when mixed with others, like steel, dark, or psychic. The fighting type's role in mythology is smaller but significant. Keldeo and the Swords of Justice were based on Alexandre Dumas' Three Musketeers, chosen because their unity reflected the honor central to the type. Terrakion's brute strength, Virizion agility, and Cobalion's composure each illustrate a distinct virtue. Keldeo's training under them is an allegory for the player's own growth, learning from challenge, evolving through conviction. The four even share a common musical theme in their battle soundtracks, a rhythmic pulse of drums and strings that imitates galloping hooves and synchronized heartbeats. Even humor finds its place in this type's history. The move Focus Punch, infamous for failing if the user flinches, was described by one developer as the art of not sneezing mid-kick. Hitmontop's spinning animations were known to crash early game builds because the engine couldn't handle inverted rotation frames. Lucario's early prototype sprite was accidentally given a tail twice as long, and testers joked that it resembled a kite. These small imperfections mirror the fighting type's own message mastery isn't the absence of mistakes, but the will to continue. Many fighting Pokemon share an affinity for music and rhythm. Hitmontop's rotation, Medicham's yoga chants, and Mienshau's dance-inspired strikes all rely on timing. This connection between combat and art is intentional. In interviews, Junichi Masuda explained that the developers view the type as the pulse of the body. Even moves like Bulk Up or Calm Mind have underlying sound patterns designed to sync with battle music, subtly reinforcing the feeling of focus. The type doesn't just fight, it breathes. At the heart of every fighting Pokemon lies the same paradox: restraint through motion, peace through struggle. Whether it's Hariyama pushing against waves, Lucario feeling the world through aura, or Pangoro standing guard in a forest, each one expresses a truth that transcends the battlefield. The type endures because it captures something deeply human, the search for balance between strength and serenity. Every fighting type Pokemon carries its own rhythm, a heartbeat that defines its strength. In every region, these rhythms sound different. The slow drumbeat of Hoenn's coastlines, the echo of Unova's stadiums, the quiet pulse of Galar's empty gyms at night. The type is as old as motion itself, its energy found anywhere willpower meets resistance. To train a fighting type is to learn patience, and to fight with one is to understand that victory isn't noise, it's the silence between breaths. Blaziken remains one of the purest symbols of that inner flame. Its long limbs and fiery strikes draw from traditional martial arts poses, specifically Taekwondo, where kicks are both attack and expression. When it first appeared in Hoenn, its concept was to embody courage rather than rage. The flames around its wrists act like propulsive jets, flaring brightest just before a leap, an effect that gives every movement the appearance of preparation never panic. The developers wrote that Blaziken burns with intent, and that phrase became the foundation of its legacy. Its mega evolution amplified this, showing the result of relentless training, speed honed to precision, energy condensed into focus. It's not a creature of chaos, but of discipline so intense it glows. Infernape continued that flame into the next generation, but in a new form, not a disciplined master, but a fighter who learns balance through emotion. Its design was inspired by Sun Wukong, but the studio gave it the tone of a modern student, fiery, expressive, and endlessly adaptable. The glowing fur that runs down its arms and tail was animated to flow like a candle wick, alive and reactive. In the anime, Infernape's emotional arc became one of redemption, showing that passion isn't weakness when guided by trust. The combination of fire and fighting types in its line came to represent more than physical heat. It symbolized the warmth between trainer and Pokemon, the fire that keeps a journey alive even in failure. Pangoro's philosophy could not be more different. Where Infernape and Blaziken rise from discipline and training, Pangoro's strength comes from instinct and heart. It evolved from the small, anxious Pancham only when it learned to stand up for others. Its Pokédex entries call it a protector of the weak, and that theme carried through every adaptation. Even its posture, shoulders low, hands in its pockets, was drawn to evoke quiet power. The leaf in its mouth, a small constant across its appearances, was meant to show patience. The idea was that Pangoro never needed to bite down or swing first. Just holding that leaf steady meant control. It embodies what the fighting type often hides: gentleness beneath size. Mienxiao's grace takes that same calm to another level. Every motion it makes feels choreographed, deliberate. The long flowing fur that drapes from its arms was modeled after the ribbons used in Chinese wushu dance, the way air trails follow through a perfect strike. Developers coded extra frames of animation in its attack cycle to make each movement seem impossibly smooth, like silk cutting through wind. Its fur sleeves are said to grow longer as it trains, representing mastery through patience. When Mienxiao uses the move Aura Sphere, the animation slows slightly compared to other Pokemon, not as an error, but as intention. It was made to feel effortless. When the light catches its blades, the reflections form faint arcs resembling crescent moons, giving the illusion of eternal motion even when still. Developers described Gallade as the hero's hesitation, the instant where courage and restraint meet. Lucario bridges both sides of that philosophy, strength and awareness fused into one. Its aura abilities allow it to sense emotion, but also to transform empathy into precision. When Lucario channels Aura Sphere, it reads the rhythm of the air around it, drawing invisible patterns that match its opponent's heartbeat. Its mega evolution visualizes spiritual awakening, fur rising into energy, pulse amplified by purpose. It was no accident that Lucario became the face of the fighting type for so many generations. It stands for the unseen fighter, the one who wins without cruelty. Every time its aura glows, it reminds the world that strength is not domination, it's understanding. Annihilape, the evolution of Primeape, reveals the shadow of that same truth. Once consumed by rage, this Pokemon's story ends in peace. The fighting spirit within it became too powerful for the body to contain, burning itself free until only calm remained. The gray flames that coil around its arms aren't fire, they're remnants of emotion. Even in the Pokédex, its entry reads like a parable. It no longer feels anger, only quiet. Developers said they wanted it to represent release, the fighter who no longer needs to prove anything. Its ghost typing isn't darkness, its transcendence. When it attacks, its movements carry both sorrow and serenity, the last breath of a storm that has learned to rest. Iron Valiant, by contrast, embodies the future's vision of combat. It's both Gallade and Gardevoir, merged through machine precision. Every light along its armor pulses like a heartbeat rendered in metal. The animation team designed its attacks to flicker, glowing bright in bursts to show energy building through circuitry, not muscle. Though synthetic, its fighting type remains symbolic, progress guided by purpose. Its story isn't of rage or pride, but of evolution, what happens when honor outlives the body and becomes design. The developers described it as a legend reimagined by logic, a final reflection of the fighting type's journey from ancient ritual to engineered perfection. The moves themselves carry quiet histories that mirror their users. Focus Blast, one of the strongest and most unreliable of all fighting moves, represents the dual nature of mastery. Even with perfect power, success isn't guaranteed. Its accuracy of 70% is intentional, a design choice to symbolize unpredictability. Close Combat, one of the most direct and cinematic attacks, was given no flashy effects for the same reason. The absence of distance, the face-to-face impact, was meant to convey mutual respect. The first time it appeared in animation, both Pokémon moved in unison, striking as equals. That decision became part of its identity, a move where victory and humility happen in the same instant. Even lesser-known moves, like Bulk Up and Counter, tell parts of the story. Bulk Up's red glow mirrors controlled adrenaline, strength born from composure. Counter, dating back to the very first games, encapsulates the heart of martial philosophy, the idea that reacting calmly to aggression is a higher skill than attacking first. In early code, Counter was the only move that dealt double damage without a power stat. It was meant to reward patience over aggression, quietly teaching players the type's core truth. Fighting is not violence, it's balance. Heracross fits perfectly in that continuum. Its horned silhouette, though intimidating, hides a gentle nature. The Pokédex describes it lifting boulders with pride and defending forests with unyielding strength. The horn shape, resembling both a tree branch and a warrior's crest, was drawn to symbolize connection between power and nature. When Heracross Mega evolves, its horn curves forward like a blade drawn for a single, decisive strike, an image of commitment. Developers said the goal was to show that even creatures of instinct can fight with grace. The fighting type's connection to tradition appears even in its badges. The knuckle badge of Dewford, shaped like a coiled fist, represents readiness. The cobble badge of Veilstone, interlocking plates, reflects balance between mind and body. The Stow-on Side badge from Galar, a hand encircled by stone, symbolizes inner focus amid external chaos. Each one is imperfectly symmetrical, reminding trainers that discipline doesn't erase individuality. They are not trophies, they are reminders of the journey that built them. Keldeo, the final of the Swords of Justice, embodies the completion of that journey. The lore describes it as the student who outgrew its teachers, learning compassion from Cobalion, strength from Terrakion, and speed from Virizion. When Keldeo assumes its resolute form, its mane flows like running water, a visual metaphor for growth that never stops. Its move, Secret Sword, cuts not armor, but pride, a strike that humbles both sides equally. In Unova's mythology, it is said that when Keldeo runs across rivers, the surface never ripples. It moves in perfect harmony with its world, Fighting type items tie these philosophies together like quiet echoes. The black belt increases strength through repetition. The focus sash symbolizes survival under pressure, and the expert belt represents mastery, earned, not given. In Alola, the Phytinium Z turned physical motion into ritual dance, letting both trainer and Pokémon share one heartbeat. The animation for all-out pummeling was choreographed to match martial kata, each movement a declaration of intent, never aggression. Developers described it as the first time the fighting type could breathe on screen. In every corner of the world, from dojos to stadiums, from mountaintops to underwater rings, the fighting type endures as the heartbeat of Pokémon. It is the pulse behind every act of courage, every moment of restraint. Whether it's the stillness of Metacam, the fire of Blaziken, or the peace of Annihilate, they all remind us that the truest fight is not against an opponent, it's within the self. The world of Pokémon moves with endless rhythm, and within that rhythm, the fighting type keeps time. Every move in the fighting type tells its own story. Some were born from real-world martial arts, others from the quiet imagination of how spirit and motion become one. What makes this type so unique is that its attacks rarely focus on destruction. They express intention. Even the strongest blows have meaning beyond their impact. The fighting type, more than any other, turns combat into communication, a language built through movement. Close combat, the move now synonymous with the type, was introduced in the 4th generation as a reflection of vulnerability. Developers described it as the strike that leaves nothing behind. Its user lowers its defenses not out of recklessness, but trust, a symbolic gesture that mirrors the openness between two fighters. Its animation has remained simple for that reason. No swirling lights, no elemental bursts, just motion and connection. Lucario, Blaziken, Gallade, and Infernape have all used it as a signature move, each bringing their own philosophy to it. Lucario strikes with empathy, Gallade with precision, Blaziken with determination, and Infernape with emotion. No matter the user, close combat feels like honesty in action. Dynamic Punch, one of the most chaotic moves in the entire franchise, was designed to embody controlled chaos. It almost always causes confusion, a detail meant to symbolize the cost of excessive force. Early development notes described it as raw strength, unanchored. Machamp was its primary user, and the animation was drawn to exaggerate the recoil from its own hit, the visual metaphor that even great power must be handled carefully. The low accuracy rate of 50% wasn't just to balance gameplay, it represented unpredictability, the idea that perfect power is impossible to sustain. Focus Blast became a kind of modern echo of Dynamic Punch, all intensity, but refined through spiritual awareness. Its Japanese name, Fight Spirit Wave, better captures its intent. It channels energy rather than muscle, letting fighting Pokémon express their will without physical contact. It's one of the few fighting moves coded as special rather than physical, symbolizing inner strength made visible. Developers intentionally gave it 70% accuracy to represent focus, faltering under pressure, a quiet reminder that even concentration can waver. Aura Sphere, perhaps the most graceful of all, holds a special place in the type's mythology. First associated with Lucario, it became the physical form of aura itself, the unseen bond between living beings. In code, Aura Sphere has a 100% accuracy value because it cannot miss, a choice meant to convey understanding transcending distance. When the move was animated, the development team used smooth particle paths rather than linear beams, so it looked like light moving with intention. The result was a move that felt alive, a perfect fusion of empathy and energy. Counter, one of the oldest fighting moves, has remained nearly unchanged since the first generation. Its damage formula was written backwards. It doesn't strike until struck, and when it does, it returns double the pain received. The simplicity of its programming hides profound meaning. Counter represents patience, the heart of every martial philosophy, power through stillness. The Pokemon who use it best, Hitmonlee, Lucario, and even Wobbuffet in its own odd way, show that strength doesn't always begin the fight, it ends it. Reversal is the opposite face of that same coin. The lower the user's health, the stronger the move becomes. That concept, rising in the face of defeat, was described by Game Freak as the courage mechanic. It's one of the earliest examples of a move built to encourage persistence. Its base power was never meant to be fixed. It changes dynamically as the Pokemon approaches fainting, like adrenaline in code form. The move Endure was later created to pair with it, allowing Pokemon to survive a hit and respond with Reversal, capturing the spirit of never giving up. Brick Break, though simple in function, has a hidden history in design. It was modeled after demonstrations of board breaking, a performance of control more than violence. Developers coded it to remove barriers like reflect and light screen, a symbolic act of shattering illusions. It's not a move of damage, it's clarity. When a fighting Pokemon breaks through those defenses, it mirrors the mental act of breaking through fear. Bulk Up, first appearing in Generation 3, is among the calmest moves in the entire series. The red glow surrounding the user was created from a slowed particle effect, meant to look like breath expanding. It increases both attack and defense not by adding power, but by recentering the body. In the data files, it's tagged internally as Steady Rise, an effect name used nowhere else. When a Pokemon uses Bulk Up, it isn't charging up like a weapon, it's aligning itself, breathing, preparing. Detect, the move often overlooked, is one of the most meaningful. Functionally, it's identical to Protect, but its flavor text reads differently. The user focuses to predict an attack. It's not avoidance, it's awareness. The idea is that true fighters don't hide from harm, they anticipate it. In martial arts terms, it's Zanshin, the perfect state of perception. Developers gave it limited availability intentionally, reserving it for Pokemon who embody discipline, like Medicham and Lucario. Vacuum Wave was an attempt to bring speed into the philosophy of control. It was the first priority fighting-type move, designed to show the idea of striking through air itself, precision at light speed. Lucario's animation for it involves a brief stance before release, almost like a single calm exhale. The idea was to give fighting types a move that rewarded accuracy and flow instead of brute force. Drain Punch captures another recurring theme: balance. Its effect of restoring health based on damage dealt mirrors the idea of energy circulation, taking and giving in equal measure. Early artwork showed it as a golden spiral of motion, resembling chi moving through the body. Developers considered naming it Life Strike, but changed it to maintain the traditional punch naming lineage shared by Dynamic and Focus Punch. It's the move of equilibrium, the moment a fighter regains strength through understanding rhythm. High Jump Kick and its predecessor, Jump Kick, trace their origins back to Hitmonlee's design. The self-damage penalty when missing was created not for balance, but symbolism. The early manual described it as a leap of faith, where a failed landing means self-harm, not out of punishment, but consequence. The animation's vertical leap, stretching beyond the frame, was meant to suggest courage exceeding limits. Blaziken and Infernape inherited this move to symbolize evolution of the same bravery through generations. Submission, one of the earliest named moves of the type, was intended to sound both physical and emotional. The term came from wrestling, but in Pokemon it also represents surrender, not defeat, but the acceptance of struggle. Developers gave it recoil damage to represent the toll of compassion, as though every blow hurts both sides. Machamp's use of submission in early games was meant to demonstrate honor, a fighter that wins without seeking destruction. Low sweep and low kick, two of the most frequently confused moves, have different inspirations. Low kick comes from judo and emphasizes using gravity against an opponent, while low sweep was introduced later to show speed-based disruption. In-game, low kick's damage depends on the opponent's weight, a small piece of realism hidden in the code. This detail was added by programmer Hirotaka Inoue, who reportedly wanted to make players feel the heaviness of the world. Sacred Sword, the signature move of the Swords of Justice, has its own spiritual meaning. It ignores stat changes, a deliberate choice to show that righteousness cannot be diminished by deceit. The name was translated carefully to preserve its tone of purity. Each of the three original Musketeers uses it with slight animation differences. Cobalion's is defensive, Terrakian's forceful, Virizian's elegant. Keldeo's version glows brighter blue, representing youth and hope. Storm Throw and Circle Throw, two deceptively similar moves, tell different lessons. Storm Throw, which always lands a critical hit, represents inevitability, the calm acceptance that truth cuts through pretense. Circle Throw, which forces the opponent to switch out, symbolizes redirection, the principle of Aikido. Instead of defeating an enemy, it moves them aside, restoring balance. Both moves remind players that victory isn't always measured by damage. Even the rare fighting type status moves hold quiet secrets. Coaching, introduced in Generation 8, reflects mentorship, a Pokemon lending its strength to its allies. The animation, a glowing stance with open arms, represents guidance through example. Mat Block, learned by Greninja, comes from protective martial arts gestures used to shield teammates, a brief, powerful defense that only works at the start of battle, like an opening bow of respect. The fighting type's design extends beyond moves and Pokemon. It's in the way the games treat movement itself. In early titles, martial trainers always stood one tile closer to their opponents than other types, symbolizing directness. In later games, they bow before combat, a tiny detail that most players miss. The sound design of fighting type attacks leans toward organic percussion, the thump of impact, the hiss of air, the low hum of power controlled rather than unleashed. In competition, fighting type moves shaped strategies for decades. Cross chop, superpower, and close combat all defined metagames across generations, but what made them memorable wasn't raw numbers, it was the human quality behind them. These moves were risky, honest, and direct. When players selected them, they accepted imperfection, a willingness to trust timing over certainty. In the end, the fighting type is the art of imperfection turned to purpose. Every punch, kick, and stance is a meditation in disguise. From the playful acrobatics of Hawlucha to the quiet balance of Medicham, every movement tells the same story, strength tempered by mindfulness. Its moves remind us that power alone means nothing without awareness, and that even in a world of creatures born from imagination, discipline remains the purest kind of magic. The legacy of the fighting type is written in motion, not words. From the still mats of ancient dojos to the roaring lights of Galar's stadiums, its rhythm has never stopped. Each generation added new interpretations, but the heartbeat stayed the same: courage through calm, energy through patience, power through control. The type story is the story of learning to move without aggression, to act with clarity instead of anger. In Kanto, the fighting dojo was once a rival to Sabrina's psychic gym. Its loss wasn't just about type disadvantage, it was about philosophy. The psychic type represents the mind's dominance over matter, while the fighting type represents harmony between the two. The dojo's leader, still training quietly beside her gym decades later, became a symbol of humility. That single building, with its wooden floors, punching bags, and sparring mats, stands as one of the oldest sanctuaries in the Pokemon world. In Johto, Blackthorn City's martial history exists in the Dragon Tamer lineage, where fighting influence shaped strength into grace. Though the region has no fighting gym of its own, its trainers often pair the type with dragons, a union of discipline and instinct. Pokemon like Hitmonlee and Heracross appear among the mountain monks who train in silence, suggesting that the fighting type's home isn't in cities or arenas, but in solitude. In Hoenn, the type became art. Brawly's gym beside the sea fused meditation with motion, his training tied to the tides. The sound of crashing waves outside his dojo became the natural metronome for battle, and the knuckle badge itself was shaped after the flow of a wave. When his Hariyama pushes against the surf, it isn't resisting, it's blending with it. Hoenn showed that the fighting type could be more than discipline, it could be rhythm, merging strength with serenity. In Sinnoh, Maylene's Veilstone Gym elevated the philosophy further. The city's stone streets and industrial skyline contrast her bare feet and quiet focus. Her Lucario mirrors her perfectly, calm, adaptable, spiritually aware. Together, they embody modern mastery, a new generation's understanding of the ancient art. The cobble badge she awards resembles intertwined forms, each piece representing one element of balance: body, will, and heart. Unova expanded that balance into spectacle. Marshall's Elite Four chamber was designed with pillars of stone that rise and fall between battles, representing perseverance and renewal. The ground itself shifts like a living training hall. His partnership with Pokemon like Sawk and Throh symbolizes respect for duality, red and blue, power and precision, opposing forms of the same truth. His quote about strength as the physical form of will became a mantra for players, repeated across decades of games and tournaments alike. In Kalos, the type reached elegance. Corina, the Shalor City gym leader, brought martial training into harmony with rollerblading, motion as meditation. Her Lucario, capable of mega evolution, represents unity between trainer and Pokemon in its purest form. The Tower of Mastery, standing tall above the sea, acts as a lighthouse for all who seek balance. The Lucarionite she offers isn't a symbol of power, but connection, an acknowledgement that mastery is shared, not owned. In Alola, the type found peace. No dedicated gym stands there, but the Phytinium Z crystal serves the same role, channeling intention through dance. When a trainer performs all-out pummeling, every step mirrors a kata, each motion synchronized with their Pokemon. It's an act of faith, not in strength, but in harmony. The Alolan philosophy views combat as communication, and the fighting type as the purest form of dialogue between souls. In Galar, the tradition met technology. Bia's stadium, built from stone and surrounded by dust, became a temple of determination. Her silence speaks louder than any crowd. Each of her matches feels like a ritual, her strikes guided by breath and repetition. Her Graplock's movements under the desert sun are said to resemble the slow rhythm of the earth itself. B's badge, circular and simple, captures the essence of the fighting type: endless practice, unbroken focus. In Paldea, the type evolved again. Trainers like Aerie of Team Star turned fighting into emotion, using passion as both weapon and shield. Her base, built around self-expression rather than conformity, redefined the fighting type's place in modern lore. Her Annihilate fights with fury, transmuted into peace, its ghost typing a reflection of transformation. The battle against her isn't one of hostility, it's about recognition, seeing yourself in the opponent, understanding that every act of resistance can also be an act of healing. Across all these regions, the fighting type's music carries the same heartbeat: heavy percussion, soft wind instruments, the hum of motion. Developers have said the sound design for these Pokemon uses organic sources: recorded strikes on padded mats, the rhythm of a skipping rope, the pulse of a heartbeat slowed and remixed. In some games, the sound of close combat or focus punch includes a faint echo of human breath, a reminder that even in a digital world, the spirit of training is alive. The evolution of fighting moves reflects that same growth. In the early games, there were fewer than 10 of them. Each was blunt and physical: karate chop, double kick, submission. Over time, they became reflections of mindset. Focus energy encouraged patience. Bulk up taught restraint. Coaching and detect brought awareness. Even new attacks like body press and aura wheel echo the theme of mind meeting muscle. Body press, for example, deals damage based on defense. The stronger one's guard, the greater the strike. It's the perfect metaphor for strength, born from protection rather than aggression. One of the most interesting modern additions, Final Gambit, breaks the type's usual rules. Its user feints to deal damage equal to its remaining health, turning self-sacrifice into a final statement. Developers called it the resolve mechanic, symbolizing complete commitment. In lore, it parallels the philosophy of ancient warriors who fought for ideals greater than themselves. When used by Pokemon like Gallade or Mienshao, it's not desperation, it's devotion. Another quiet innovation came with Focus Punch, a move defined not by what it does, but by when it fails. Its effect only triggers if the user remains undisturbed, transforming inner calm into tangible power. It's the only move where hesitation breaks the spell, a mechanical meditation. Players who've used it know the unique stillness before the hit lands, that brief heartbeat of silence before motion returns. It's the closest thing in the game to breath made visible. Even items like the Black Belt, Focus Band, and Expert Belt have symbolic consistency. Their Japanese names reference practice and endurance. The Black Belt, for instance, was originally called the Martial Heartband. The Focus Band's hidden flavor text describes it as woven from the hopes of its wearer, a poetic line tucked away in the game's data. These details might seem small, but they're part of a tradition, a design philosophy that treats effort as beauty. The competitive history of the fighting type mirrors its story in the lore. In the early years, fighting moves were unreliable but rewarding. Players used them with trust rather than certainty. Later generations gave the type balance, letting its Pokemon dominate in both physical and special play. Lucario, Conkeldurr, and Terrakion All rose to fame in tournaments, not for perfection, but for their flexibility. They could strike hard or adapt gracefully, representing mastery through awareness. Even in the Pokemon anime, the fighting type has always stood for growth. Ash's Infernape, B's Graplocked, and Karina's Lucario each learned to balance emotion with purpose. Their arcs all follow the same pattern: anger transformed into clarity, chaos into composure. When these Pokemon battle, it's less about damage and more about realization, understanding that victory means self-knowledge. Beyond the games, the fighting type influences Pokemon culture itself. Merchandise, like training gloves, dojo figures, and collectible belts all draw from its imagery. The official artwork for fighting type energy cards in the trading card game shows ground fracturing under impact, but the light in the cracks glows gently, not violently. That duality, power with peace, defines the entire aesthetic. Even the Pokédex entries across generations share an unseen connection. Many fighting Pokémon are described as teaching humans, not being taught by them. Conkeldurr showed people how to build. Lucario senses aura shared by all life. Medicham achieves enlightenment through meditation. Hariyama honors tradition through sumo. Every entry is a quiet reflection of humanity's partnership with discipline. The fighting type blurs the line between trainer and student, making each battle a conversation rather than a contest. The rare legendary and mythical fighting Pokemon reflect the type's higher ideals. Keldeo learns from others, Cobalion guides through wisdom, and Terrakion defends the innocent. In competitive terms, their stat balance was designed intentionally to show diversity. No one aspect dominates. Power, speed, and defense share equal importance, mirroring cooperation over hierarchy. When they appear together in battle, their synchronized motions are coded to be rhythmically aligned, an invisible nod to unity. The future of the fighting type remains open, but its direction is clear. New generations will likely continue to reinterpret what strength means, moving beyond raw power into connection, art, and spirit. The type will keep evolving because its philosophy can never end. There will always be new ways to express courage, new ways to find balance. When you strip away all the colors, the stats, and the battle systems, what's left is the same truth that's been there since the beginning. The fighting type isn't about hitting harder. It's about motion with meaning. It's about control, compassion, rhythm, and reflection. Every punch thrown by Machamp, every breath taken by Medicham, every step of Bia's bare feet on stone, they all echo the same quiet message, that strength is never the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. The world of Pokemon may be vast and full of wonder, but among all its types, only one mirrors the heartbeat of those who train beside their partners. The fighting type endures because it is timeless, an eternal dance between body and spirit, between stillness and motion, between who we are and who we strive to become. And in that stillness after the battle ends, when the world falls quiet again, you can almost hear it, the soft, steady rhythm of practice, patience, and peace. The heartbeat of the fighting type. Every fighting type story begins with training. Whether in silence or under roaring waves, every movement is a memory written into muscle. Machamp, Lucario, Medicham, and Galade may seem separated by regions and centuries, but their training rituals all follow the same rhythm, repetition until the act becomes instinct. Machamp begins at sunrise, its forearms moving in perfect symmetry as it pushes against invisible resistance. It isn't fighting an opponent, but gravity itself, learning the weight of the world with each breath. Developers once described this animation cycle as the world's slowest earthquake, meant to express quiet strength rather than speed. Lucario's training, by contrast, is inward. When it meditates in the mountains, it isn't resting, it's listening. The developers modeled its aura sensing behavior after real martial meditation, with its idle stance in modern games subtly swaying, a breathing rhythm rather than static posture. In lore, Lucario's diet consists of minimal sustenance, surviving mostly on spiritual energy absorbed from its surroundings. This wasn't added for realism. It symbolized the idea that discipline itself can sustain a warrior. Medicam's design continues this theme in a gentler way. Based on yoga poses, its movements are animated with elongated frames, creating the illusion of stillness and motion. Its ability, pure power, doubles its strength not through muscle, but through concentration. In the Pokédex, it's said to meditate for an entire month without eating. Early game developers clarified that this wasn't starvation, it was balance, a Pokemon learning to live in harmony with its own heartbeat. Gallade's sword-like arms are drawn at specific angles, always slightly downward, as a visual symbol of restraint. The team intentionally avoided sharp sounds in its animations, using soft metallic tones to create the sense of ceremony rather than aggression. In competitive play, its psychic typing represents mind over muscle, but lore tells a deeper truth. Gallade fights only to protect. Every stance it takes is defensive first, offensive second, the very essence of martial discipline. The world around these Pokemon shapes their training. In Hoenn, the ocean itself becomes a teacher. Hariyama practices sumo on beaches, its enormous hands pushing waves instead of opponents. In concept art, its palms were drawn larger than its head to emphasize control over chaos. The texture pattern on its skin, resembling bandages, was inspired by traditional cloth wraps used in sumo rituals. When a Hariyama bows before combat, the animation references the Shinto act of purification, cleansing the space before competition. In Kalos, where beauty and balance intertwine, trainers like Karina bring movement into art. Her Lucario's Mega Evolution sequence is framed like a dance, its aura expanding with her heartbeat. The Tower of Mastery, where she trains, is modeled after a Buddhist pagoda, with each floor representing one stage of personal understanding. The developers even included faint bell sounds in the background of that area, barely audible unless players turn off other music to suggest the presence of meditation. Even items hold stories. The Black Belt, one of the oldest battle tools, has evolved in description across generations. In early games, it merely boosted fighting moves, but later entries added a line about concentration deepening with wear. Its hidden value was coded at 10%, but its symbolic weight was immeasurable. The Expert Belt, introduced later, was its philosophical counterpart, mastery through adaptability. Game Freak once noted that the belt names weren't about clothing, but milestones, from novice to master. Some fighting Pokemon choose natural arenas rather than gyms. Conkeldurr works in construction zones, using its concrete pillars as both weapon and metaphor. Its species lore says it once taught humans how to mix concrete, a rare inversion of the teacher-student dynamic. The move Hammer Arm, one of its signatures, has slightly slower frame data than most. Fighting moves, a deliberate choice to make its strength feel deliberate and heavy rather than fast. Each swing tells a story of patience through labor. In Alola, the concept of training was reimagined through harmony. The Phytinium Z crystal, allows any Pokemon to express fighting energy through synchronized motion. When a trainer performs the all-out pummeling Z move, the sequence's frame count matches a steady heartbeat, exactly 60 beats per minute. This detail was confirmed in developer notes. The move isn't just about power, but rhythm, syncing human and Pokemon together as one. Even weather has meaning in the world of fighting Pokemon. The soft sand of Galar's Stow-on Side Gym was chosen for symbolic reasons. Bee's matches leave trails in the dust that fade after each turn, representing impermanence. Her Grapplock's arena-like movements were animated underwater first, then slowed down on land to preserve the fluidity of motion. In one design interview, Game Freak's art team said they wanted her gym to feel like breathing earth. Many fighting Pokemon also share subtle bonds with nature. Heracross, though often grouped with bug types, embodies martial focus. Its horn tilts forward slightly in-game to mimic a judo grip, and its Mega Evolution form bows its head before charging, a visual expression of respect. Toxicroak, on the other hand, channels its toxins through fighting motion. The croaking sound during its idle animation was mixed from percussion rather than animal audio, giving its stance a drumbeat-like rhythm, aggression turned into cadence. The passage of time affects their philosophies too. The first generation fighting Pokemon were direct and raw, defined by moves like Karate Chop and Submission, power through simplicity. By the 8th generation, the type had become reflective. Moves like Coaching, Focus Energy, and Reversal encouraged patience and timing. It's as though the entire type evolved from physical expression into mindfulness, from warriors to monks. Every fighting type gym badge tells its own quiet story. The knuckle badge of Hoenn resembles a wave, the cobble badge of Sinnoh, an intertwined form, the stow badge of Galar, a stone circle. Each one captures its region's philosophy: movement, unity, endurance. The designers have said that these shapes were chosen not for aesthetics, but for feel, each badge meant to rest comfortably in a closed palm, the same way a fighter holds confidence. As trainers travel, they pass through these spaces: dojos, stadiums, beaches, and mountains, without realizing they're part of a single, connected tradition. The fighting type binds the Pokemon world, not through power, but through presence. Every punch is a prayer, every stance a story, and somewhere in every region, there's always one more fighter rising with the sun, ready to train again. The story of competition in the Pokemon world has always been tied to the fighting type. In every league, battle tower, and tournament, these Pokemon serve as living emblems of perseverance. They rarely dominate through tricks or luck. They win through repetition, rhythm, and patience. The first recorded in-game championship moments, the Pokemon League battles of Kanto, already reflected this. Trainers who brought Machamp or Hitmonlee into the Hall of Fame were described in guidebooks as fighters of old, the ones who win not by chance, but by the effort of endless training. In later generations, the type evolved from simple brute strength into something closer to art. Competitive players still recall how Lucario's Aura Sphere changed everything in the 4th generation. Its ability to hit without fail turned the tide of matches that once relied on prediction. When paired with Swords Dance or extreme speed, Lucario became the symbol of decisive calm, a fighter who only needed one clear moment to strike. Its success in online tournaments made it the modern icon of the type, and even Game Freak acknowledged its impact by featuring it prominently in official Pokemon World Championship art for years. In the 5th generation, Conkeldurr replaced Lucario's elegance with sheer endurance. Its presence in tournaments marked the rise of bulky offense teams. Trainers learned to appreciate slow power, the idea that patience could outlast speed. Conkeldurr's access to Drain Punch let it survive longer than opponents expected, and players described it as winning by breathing. Even its idle animation, swinging concrete pillars in lazy circles, mirrors the same patience that defines its battle philosophy. Gallad entered competition as both a fighter and a strategist. Its combination of psychic and fighting typing gave it rare flexibility, a duality few others could match. Its mega evolution in later generations transformed it into a tournament staple, balancing elegance and power. Developers intentionally designed its mega stance to resemble a duelist bow, signifying respect for its opponent before every strike. Competitive commentators often said that Gallade's strongest weapon wasn't its blade, but its timing. Then came the rise of Infernape, whose versatility made it a legend of the Diamond and Pearl metagame. It could perform nearly any role, sweeper, lead, or support, earning the nickname the Adaptable Flame. Its balance between offense and speed defined a generation of battles, forcing players to think several turns ahead. Behind its fiery aesthetic, though, lay the quiet message that victory comes from flexibility. Its entire design was built around equilibrium, fire as passion, fighting as control. Mienshao became another symbol of discipline in motion. Its signature move, high jump kick, was programmed with one of the highest risk-reward ratios in the entire game. Miss the hit, and the recoil was devastating. Land it, and the reward unmatched. Developers designed its animation to look like a dancer's arc rather than a fighter's leap. That grace carried into competitive play, where Mienshao became synonymous with precision. Players who mastered its timing treated it like meditation. One missed beat, and the flow collapsed. The world of tournaments also gave new meaning to moves like Focus Punch and Detect. Focus Punch rewarded composure in chaos, activating only if the user wasn't interrupted. Detect, meanwhile, represented intuition, the moment before a counterattack. Many of the top fighting-type users in official competitions learned to weave these moves into moments of stillness, turning battles into a kind of dialogue between trainers. In the anime, the fighting type carried these same lessons into story. Karina's Lucario struggled with control until it learned to sync with her emotions, a visual metaphor for the discipline that defines all martial arts. Bia's Graplocked moved like water in combat, every strike preceded by calm breath. The animation team studied real jujutsu footage to model its motions, ensuring that each limb coiled and uncoiled with precision. Even Ash's Infernape carried echoes of this philosophy, a fighter who learned to turn anger into clarity. Over time, official tournaments began reflecting this theme beyond individual Pokémon. The Pokémon World Championships in real life adopted fighting-type imagery in multiple logos, where clenched fists were stylized as energy swirls, force guided by grace. The design team explained that it wasn't meant to suggest violence, but focus, tying into the Japanese concept of ki, the spirited shout of intent used in martial arts. The fighting type's competitive journey also shaped the broader metagame. Before its introduction, strength in Pokémon battles was measured by type matchups and raw numbers. Fighting Pokémon redefined that standard. Moves like Bulk Up, Close Combat, and Drain Punch introduced new risk-reward calculations. They required prediction, trust, and emotional composure, qualities no statistic could measure. When Dynamaxing arrived in Galar, fighting Pokemon adapted once again. Moves like Max Knuckle turned every punch into an aura of empowerment, boosting allies' attack in doubles battles. This wasn't accidental. The developers intentionally made fighting the only type whose signature max move strengthened both user and partner. It was a coded reminder that strength shared is greater than strength hoarded, a digital echo of the fighting philosophy itself. The culture around these Pokemon expanded far beyond battles. Players began associating specific fighting Pokemon with sports, competitions, and teamwork. Hawlucha became a symbol of celebration, its entrance poses mimicking professional wrestling theatrics. In tournaments, fans often dressed their avatars to match it: feathers, masks, and confidence. Game Freak even programmed its animation to freeze briefly before landing a hit, mirroring the dramatic pauses of lucha libre performance. Sirfetch'd, Galar's chivalric fighter, became the embodiment of honor in competition. Its leak weapon was designed with a subtle green shimmer along the blade's edge, representing purity. In lore, its evolution requirement, landing 3 critical hits in a single battle, reflects persistence rewarded through precision. In competitive matches, that same requirement mirrored player psychology, a lesson in focus under pressure. Bia's Galar Gym remains one of the most atmospheric arenas in the series. The light filters through dusty windows, the floor creaks under the weight of footsteps, and no background music plays until the first strike lands. The silence of the opening moments forces the player to breathe with the battle. Every hit echoes like a heartbeat in an empty hall. Game Freak's sound engineers said the silence was intentional to remind players that the fight starts before the first move. In tournaments, fighting Pokemon also taught humility. Every major competitive era saw them rise, dominate, and then be countered, a reflection of balance. Machamp ruled early metas but fell to psychic types. Lucario reigned, then bowed to faster fairy users. Conkeldurr towered for a time, but gave way to newer forms like Iron Valiant. This cycle mirrors the same discipline found in training, that mastery is never permanent, only practiced. Even in casual play, these Pokemon left echoes. Players who built mono-fighting teams often describe the experience as meditation under pressure. Their losses felt personal, their victories serene. The type's limited defensive advantages forced creativity, and its reliance on reads taught intuition. In this way, the fighting type transcended the game itself. It became a practice in mindfulness, disguised as battle. In the art books, designers noted that most fighting Pokemon share one recurring visual trait: eyes that face directly forward. Unlike other types that avert or narrow their gaze, fighting types look straight ahead, a design philosophy symbolizing self-truth. Whether it's the calm stare of Lucario, the focus of Medicham, or the determination of Pangoro, every gaze reminds players that strength begins with honesty, and in every competition, official or personal, that truth endures. The fighting type is not about domination, it's about reflection. The act of battle becomes a mirror for patience. The field becomes a dojo, the opponent becomes a teacher. Every fighting Pokemon carries a story beneath the surface, a quiet, personal war fought not with others, but within. The type's greatest battles have never been about victory or defeat. They're about reconciliation. For all their muscles and motion, these Pokemon are often the most emotional in the world. Their strength isn't constant. It wavers, trembles, and rebuilds, shaped by what they feel. Gallade embodies this duality. Its psychic typing isn't there for power, but for empathy. Every slash it delivers is preceded by intuition, a sense of what its opponent feels. Developers confirmed that Gallade's attack animations were designed to look like a heartbeat rhythm, smooth and pulsing, a visual cue that it never strikes in rage. It fights not to conquer, but to protect. In the anime and Pokédex lore, Gallade will only fight for something it believes in. Its blade-like arms are always drawn at slight inward angles to symbolize humility, a warrior bowing even as it stands tall. Medicham's discipline is quieter, but equally deep. In the mountains where it trains, this Pokémon can sense the faintest changes in the wind. Its body reflects the results of meditation, refined into elegance. The Pokédex describes how it achieves complete control of its spirit through yoga, but what's more remarkable is its emotional clarity, the balance between compassion and detachment. During early development, the animators tested multiple breathing cycles for Medicham, ensuring its chest movement matched a real meditative rhythm. Its calm is not silence, it's understanding. Pangoro, by contrast, channels emotion through rebellion. Its design tells the story of a Pokémon that was once bullied as Pancham, learning to harness anger without losing itself. The leaf it keeps in its mouth isn't a gimmick. It was included as a visual reminder of restraint. When it chews the leaf, its emotions stabilize, preventing fury from overtaking reason. Developers explain that the leaf acts as a grounding symbol, an anchor of calmness against chaos. Every motion Pangoro makes is heavy, purposeful, the energy of frustration reshaped into protection. Hitmonchan's expression of emotion lies in discipline. It represents boxing not as sport, but as meditation through repetition. Its attacks are based on real combinations, jabs, hooks, uppercuts, each performed with precise tempo. Its Pokédex states that it never rests between rounds, but the deeper truth is that this endless rhythm mirrors perseverance through fatigue. Hitmonchan doesn't stop because it understands that mastery requires motion even when tired. The bandages around its wrists are more than aesthetic. They represent memory, a fighter who never forgets the scars that taught it endurance. Hitmonlee mirrors that same endurance, but through fluidity rather than repetition. Its legs can extend twice their normal length, representing adaptation in the face of obstacles. Its creators based it on the concept of elasticity, a fighter who learns not by resisting, but by yielding. In traditional martial philosophy, water is stronger than rock because it flows. Hitmonlee captures that idea perfectly. Its style, inspired by kickboxing and taekwondo, was designed to feel rhythmic rather than explosive, like a dancer improvising through a storm. Annihilapay carries the most profound emotional arc of any fighting Pokémon. Once a primeape consumed by rage, it evolved by channeling anger so intense that its spirit transcended its body. Its new form, Ghost and Fighting, is both terrifying and tragic, a creature that found peace only after death. Yet its Pokédex entries describe not torment, but serenity. It learned to control its fury by accepting it, symbolizing forgiveness of the self. The developers described its concept as the emotion that survived the body, a haunting yet hopeful idea. Even in design, its fur flows upward like smoke, anger dissolving into air. Lucario, one of the most famous fighting Pokémon, expresses emotion through connection. Its aura isn't energy in the usual sense, it's empathy given form. It can sense the feelings of others, even across great distances. This ability makes it one of the most human-like Pokémon in existence, capable of true compassion. Yet this gift also burdens it. Lucario's stoic demeanor hides constant emotional awareness, the weight of feeling everything. In animation, its eyes narrow before every battle, not in aggression but in concentration. It fights with understanding, carrying both its own emotions and those of its partner. Machamp's emotional identity is often misunderstood. Though it's portrayed as the ultimate symbol of strength, its lore consistently hints at humility. In early manuals, it's described as a Pokemon that dislikes unnecessary violence. The countless arms represent effort, not fury, an image of someone working through hardship rather than dominating others. Its Gigantamax form, towering over stadiums, was meant to embody the concept of burden carried as pride. Even the muscles across its chest were designed in even symmetry to reflect stability of spirit, not just body. Hawlucha transforms pride into joy. This Pokemon turns fighting into performance, where battle becomes expression. Its design was based on luchadors, who fight not to win, but to tell stories. Each of its poses was drawn from real wrestling choreography, blending movement and personality. Its wings, colored red, green, and white, represent courage, will, and honor, the emotional trinity of showmanship. Despite its playful flair, Hawlucha's lore shows deep respect for opponents, bowing before every match. The developers called it the fighter that smiles while teaching respect. Toxicroak's emotion is quieter, hidden under layers of irony. Its smile, sharp and crooked, conceals constant focus. The croaking sound it makes before battle is both a warning and a grounding ritual, a breathing technique before combat. It channels tension into calmness, weaponizing poison with precision. Even its dual typing tells a story: fighting for control, poison for imperfection. It represents the truth that emotion can be both strength and vulnerability at once. Medicham and Lucario share a rare connection in this emotional web. Both are empaths in different ways. Medicham internalizes emotion through meditation. Lucario externalizes it through aura. In design documents, their coexistence was intentional. One symbolizes peace through emptiness, the other through connection. When they appear together in art, they form a circle, motion meeting stillness, yin meeting yang. Infernape represents emotion as transformation. The fire across its body mirrors its state of mind, flaring with intensity but never consuming. The Pokédex describes it as possessing a flame powered by its heart, an image borrowed from ancient martial teachings where passion fuels discipline. In the anime, Ash's Infernape learns to control its blaze ability through trust rather than suppression, the perfect metaphor for emotional maturity. Developers said its design was meant to show control through color, where the brighter the flame, the calmer the mind. Keldeo, the youngest of the Swords of Justice, personifies emotional growth. Its transformation into its resolute form isn't a physical evolution, but a spiritual one, courage crystallized through self-belief. In the narrative, it begins unsure of its strength, afraid to face challenges. Through patience and mentorship, it learns confidence without arrogance. The developers based its arc on the concept of potential, a young fighter realizing that resolve isn't found in others, but earned through trials. Even items like the Focus Band and Black Belt have emotional undertones. The Focus Band's purpose, letting a Pokemon hang on with one final sliver of health, represents refusal to surrender, a metaphor for emotional endurance. The Black Belt's lore, about deepening concentration with where mirrors human perseverance. These tools exist not just for battles, but as emotional extensions of the Pokemon who wear them, proof that emotion and strategy are inseparable. Every fighting Pokemon, no matter how different, shares one unspoken bond. They all seek balance between heart and motion. Whether it's the rage of Annihilate, the serenity of Medicham, the empathy of Lucario, or the flamboyance of Halucha, they each embody emotion in its purest form, energy given direction. That's why the fighting type never truly falls out of favor. Players feel something when using them. Every punch and kick resonates with intention. Every move feels like an exhale of feeling made physical. The fighting type's emotions are not always peaceful, but they're always honest. It's the type that reminds us that strength without empathy is hollow, and emotion without control is chaos. Together, they form harmony, the essence of the fighter's path. Every Pokemon type tells a story, but none echo humanity quite like the fighting type. It is the type of hands and heart, motion given meaning. It is the reminder that strength is not born in isolation, but in connection, repetition, and humility. Across all regions, its legacy feels ancient, carried in every gym mat, every sparring ground, every battlefield turned temple. The more one learns about these Pokemon, the clearer the truth becomes. The fighting type is not about power at all. It's about purpose. Long before the first Pokeball was crafted, martial traditions already shaped the way people lived alongside their Pokemon. Early illustrations in the Hisui region showed people and Machop working together to build settlements stone by stone. Each strike was not aggression, but creation. The same strength that could destroy was also the strength that raised walls, built bridges, and cleared land for homes. Even centuries later, Conkeldurr would continue that legacy, teaching humans how to refine construction with precision. The fighting type has always been the bridge between civilization and chaos. Every one of its stories centers on balance, control over instinct. This is why so many of its Pokemon meditate, train, or follow rituals. They reflect the timeless struggle to understand what power truly means. Some, like Lucario, found enlightenment through empathy. Others, like Machamp, through labor, and others still, like Annihilate, through forgiveness. Each found peace in a different way, but all followed the same invisible current that flows through the type itself, motion that begins and ends in stillness. Martial art is not a practice of violence. It is a practice of awareness. That's why so many fighting Pokemon's abilities are rooted in patience, inner focus, justified, steadfast. They are words of restraint rather than aggression. The developers chose these names carefully, treating each like a mantra. A Pokemon that doesn't flinch, that steadies under pressure, that fights for a cause. These are not battle traits. They're philosophies coded into data. Even the type's environments reflect this spiritual tone. The Veilstone Gym, with its sliding platforms, teaches precision of movement. The Dewford Gym by the ocean teaches rhythm through resistance. The Stowe On-Side Gym, buried in sand, teaches grounding, that even in motion, one must remain anchored. These gyms act like teachers themselves, each one designed to remind players that the journey of strength is also a journey of awareness. In every generation, the fighting type redefines its place. When it first appeared in Kanto, it was raw, muscle, and instinct, the body's rebellion against uncertainty. By Johto and Hoenn, it had matured, shaped by honor and rhythm. In Sinnoh and Unova, it found discipline and technique. By Kalos, Alola, and Galar, it had become introspective, power transformed into patience. The most recent eras, like Paldea, reframe the fighting type as emotional honesty, the courage to feel, to break, to rebuild. The evolution of this type is, in many ways, the evolution of humanity's own understanding of what it means to be strong. It's easy to forget that many fighting Pokemon exist outside arenas. Machop helps build towns. Passimian forms tribes that practice cooperation over conquest. Pangoro guards forests, balancing toughness with care. Even Pokemon like Crabrawler, who trains endlessly under palm trees, represents optimism, a small fighter punching upward toward the Sunday. These stories remind players that fighting isn't always conflict. Sometimes it's persistence, the effort to rise each morning and continue. The language of their moves tells the same story. Focus punch, bulk up, detect, counter, reversal. Each one describes a state of awareness. Focus before motion, build before release, anticipate before impact, endure before triumph. Even the name close combat was inspired by emotional proximity, the uncomfortable closeness of confrontation, physical or otherwise. In that sense, every move in this type teaches a lesson beyond its mechanics. Among all Pokemon, Lucario stands as the eternal symbol of the fighting spirit. Its aura sense, its poise, its willingness to understand others, these traits made it beloved not because of strength, but because of empathy. When it closes its eyes before battle, it listens to the world, not to itself. Its aura pulse connects everything alive, proving that the heart of combat isn't separation, but unity. It's no coincidence that the word aura shares roots with breath, the rhythm that links all life. But not every fighter is serene. Some represent the chaos within the storm. Infernape's fire, blazing brighter the calmer it becomes. Annihilape's rage, quiet only once it transcends form. Pangoro's defiance, tempered by compassion. These Pokemon remind us that emotion itself is not the enemy. It is the raw material from which discipline is forged. The fighting type doesn't silence emotion, it listens to it until it finds harmony. The history of the fighting type is also a history of teaching. Gym leaders like Brawly, Maylene, Bee, and Karina never speak of domination, they speak of clarity. Brawly trains with the tide to understand rhythm. Maylene meditates barefoot on stone to learn grounding. Bee fights in silence to hear her breath between strikes. Karina races across shallow streets, transforming motion into meditation. Each of them carries a single thread in the great fabric of mastery. That stillness exists within motion, and motion within stillness. Even the symbols associated with the type carry intention. The fighting type energy card in the trading card game depicts fractured earth, glowing with orange light, the power of the ground itself, awakening. The fighting gem from the Unova era sparkles with a heartbeat pattern across its surface, representing intention condensed into a single moment. The Z-Move crystal glows in time with the trainer's pulse, syncing human and Pokemon in perfect rhythm. These are not mere items, they're reminders of connection. Through every generation, every story, every battle, the fighting type holds one universal truth: mastery is never final. The greatest trainers are not those who win, but those who keep learning after victory fades. The same is true for every fighting Pokemon. They continue to train, to meditate, to refine. It's why the type never truly rests. Its beauty lies in the endless pursuit, not the destination, and perhaps that's why these Pokemon resonate so deeply with people. When a player sends out Lucario or Galade or Medicham, they aren't just choosing power, they're choosing reflection. They're choosing to face themselves, to embrace patience, discipline, emotion, and understanding. The fighting type asks the same of players as it does of its Pokemon: to show up, breathe, and grow. The sound design in their battles even mirrors this cycle. Listen closely during a match, and you'll hear a heartbeat rhythm beneath the percussion of each attack. Every punch has a brief pause before impact, the silence before the storm. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but intentional. Game Freak's composers called it the echo of focus. That faint pause represents the fraction of a second when thought turns into action, the space where mastery lives. In the end, the fighting type isn't about the clash of fists, but the dialogue of spirits. When two trainers meet in battle, when two Pokemon lock eyes, they are not enemies, they are reflections of the same will to grow. They test each other, not to harm, but to reveal. And when the battle ends, when the dust settles and the world falls quiet again, that mutual understanding lingers. Respect born from shared effort. Somewhere in a quiet gym at dawn, a trainer kneels beside their partner. The sun filters through paper windows. The floor creaks under steady breath. A Machamp stretches. A Medicam exhales. A Lucario listens. The day begins as it always has, not with shouting, but with silence. The heartbeat of the fighting type resumes, steady and patient. It is the sound of dedication, the sound of motion learning stillness. And as the world drifts to sleep, that heartbeat continues, carrying every lesson, every strike, every breath through time, the eternal rhythm of discipline and compassion, the quiet pulse of what it means to be alive.